Welcome back to Ghost Pirate Entertainment. I'm your host, Kanan Becker, and today we do another deep dive into Tubi. And let's get to the list. Dog Soldiers is a 2002 action horror movie. Written, directed, and edited by Neil Marshall in his directorial debut. It stars Sean Pertwee, Kevin McKidd, and Emma Cleesby. During a routine nighttime training mission in the Scottish Highlands, a small squad of British soldiers find a bloody massacre with a sole survivor, who identifies that what hunts them is werewolves. This is one of my all-time favorite movies. I'm a huge fan of werewolf movies, and to me, it doesn't get much more fun and badass than this little gem. It's crazy because I made a Tubi list not too long ago, but when I saw that this movie dropped and a couple other ones on this list, I had to. There was no chance in hell that I wasn't gonna make another Tubi list with this on it. Because it's bloody, badass, just absolutely action-packed with really fun creature designs. The whole cast has character and give it their all. But really, it's just a badass action movie with werewolves. And what more can you ask for? So definitely check it out. The Hills Run Red is a 2009 slasher horror movie, directed by Dave Parker and written by David J. Shaw. It stars Sophie Monk, Tad Hildenbrink, and William Sadler. A group of horror movie fanatics are looking for a filming location for a movie that has been rated as the bloodiest movie of all time. However, they discover something dark and more sinister than they could have ever imagined. This is one of my absolute favorite hidden gems ever. It probably is my favorite hidden gem. This is the one that whenever anyone asks me, what is a really underrated movie, a movie that nobody knows about, a real absolute hidden gem that I recommend, I always go to this one. I love this movie so much that I actually made multiple Babyface, which is the name of the killer, the titular slasher that's in this movie. He's called the Babyface, and he wears this super badass, just absolutely gruesome mask. And I've made multiple versions of it myself through the years, because if you wanted one, you had to make it. Nobody sold them because this movie is just that underground. But it's such a cool movie. It's called a slasher, but it's so much more in my opinion. It's surprising and twisted and goes down this really weird rabbit hole into directions you're not gonna expect. It gets gory and graphic and gruesome, but in a really fun way. This movie isn't super dark. It's not so dark that you're not going to have fun with it. But it doesn't shy away from anything, and it touches on some really uncomfortable subject matter, stuff that's just super unhinged. This movie is savage and dark and absolutely twisted, and I highly, highly recommend it.
I know this book will drive people crazy. Let's hope so. The movie comes out next month.
In the Mouth of Madness is a 1994 supernatural horror movie. Directed and scored by John Carpenter, it stars Sam Neill, Julie Carmen, and Jorgen Prichnow. An insurance investigator visits a small town while looking into the disappearance of a successful author, but begins to question his sanity when the lines between fiction and reality blur.
The riots began because the stores could not meet the demands of Sutter Kane's novel, In the Mouth of Madness.
Kane disappeared 2 months ago without a trace.
You're the guy that writes horror books.
You can forget about Stephen King. Kane outsells them all.
Like I said, when I saw that Tubi had added these movies, I was just so excited and couldn't wait to get started on this list. Because I remember back in the day when this was on VHS, it was a new release at Hollywood Video, which is the video store near me, and I just rented it based on nothing. I didn't even know John Carpenter directed it. It just had a cool looking cover, and me and my friend were looking for something to watch, grabbed it. knew nothing at all about this movie and immediately fell in love with it. It's twisted and dark, and it stuck with me long after the movie is over because it's one of those psychologically twisted mind benders that really takes some time to digest and figure out exactly what happens because it twists all over the place throughout the runtime. But Sam Neill is fantastic in this movie. Everything from just being this really uptight investigator, just cool as can be, to being just an absolutely lost his mind and mental patient that has you cracking up. He just kills it in this movie. It's crazy because to me, as much as I love The Thing and Halloween and other John Carpenter movies, this is the one that just never seems to be at the top of the list. If you're not going to put it number 3, it's got to be up there. This is definitely, in my opinion anyway, one of the very, very best John Carpenter movies. This is another fantastic movie and another one that I highly, highly recommend. The Canal is a 2014 Irish horror movie. Written and directed by Ivan Kavanagh, it stars Rupert Evans, Hannah Hoekstraw, and Steve Oram. David and his family decide to move to an old house by a canal and dismiss rumors of the place being haunted. But David starts to have nightmarish visions when he suspects his wife of cheating and slowly begins to descend into madness.
I looked up, and there was someone looking over the cubicle wall at me.
This was a first time watch for me, and I was surprised on the directions that this movie goes, because it has you guessing multiple times thinking that it's going in one direction, and then it quickly switches on you, and now it's going down this other way. But it's all done in this moody, atmospheric way, and the visuals in this are really cool. There are some really strange, bizarre visuals that it gives you with really cool practical effects that make you question, is this reality or is this just a fantasy? And it's creepy and disturbing and just really twisted and uncomfortable, and it does a great job of keeping you in suspense, just on the edge of your seat. It's well acted and directed, and I really appreciated the pacing of it because it never feels like a slow burn per se, but yet it still moves at a kind of slow pace in this weird way that just constantly feels haunting and creepy, but yet it feels like it's constantly moving, so you never feel bored. It doesn't feel stagnant. It really keeps you invested. This is a solid little gem that's most definitely worth adding to your list. The Free Fall is a 2021 horror drama. Directed by Adam Stilwell, it stars Andrea Londo, Shane Ashmore, and Jane Badler. A young woman must struggle with an overbearing husband after she attempts to take her own life.
You don't remember? I found you in the tub, Sarah. You tried to kill yourself.
Sarah?
Sometimes the voices in our head are there to guide us.
This is a really interesting, moody, atmospheric movie. It's another one that dives really deep into psychological areas that really cause you to question what is really going on. And you may guess by the end what's gonna happen, but at least for me, it very much caught me off guard. I did not expect it to do what it does. It is a small movie though, so it's not this wild, huge production kind of deal, but it's really well executed and looks gorgeous. The costume and wardrobe design, as well as the set, just beautifully done. You can really see attention to detail and that they really put a lot of thought and time and passion into this project. It's another one of those movies that has this elegant beauty about it. It has this poetic way of just kind of feeling like a blanket that's being pulled over you. It feels disturbing and uncomfortable, yet it just feels gorgeous and haunting. But if you're into small, atmospheric, twisted indie horror, then definitely give it a look.
This is our family story.
Lovecraft Country is a 2022 horror drama series. Developed by Misha Green, it's based on and serving as a continuation of the 2016 novel of the same name. It stars Jonathan Majors, Journey Smollett, and Wunmi Mosaku. The story's about a young black man who travels across the segregated United States of the 1950s in search of his missing father and learns of dark secrets plaguing a town in which the famous author H.P. Lovecraft based the location of many of his fictional tales around.
Just trying to get out.
Everything is where and as it should be.
This is such an amazing, brilliant series that just never got enough love for multiple reasons. I feel like it just kind of dropped at the wrong time and people just didn't watch it for loads of reasons. I'm not going to get into all of those, but this is a fantastic fantasy horror series that's got some of the most cool looking creature designs, set designs, costume designs, everything brilliantly looks like the 1950s in a meticulous way. It has so much style, but yet it has a real heart to it and has a lot of social, topical issues to talk about. But it also has another side to it where it's just a fun, action-packed, epic adventure. It feels in a lot of ways like a National Treasure or Indiana Jones, but that has some badass creatures and creepy-ass imagery as well. This is a super fun series that I'm hoping now that it's dropped on Tubi will finally get some of the attention it deserves. It's one that I highly, highly, highly recommend.
Rawhead Rex.
Rawhead Rex is a 1986 Irish fantasy horror movie, directed by George Pablo and written by Clive Barker, based on Clive Barker's short story of the same name. It stars David Dukes, Kelly Piper, and Hugh O'Connor. The story focuses on a monstrous pagan deity's bloody rampage through the Irish countryside. This is such a fun, classic 1980s monster flick. I absolutely love the look and design of Rawhead Rex. It's gory and campy, but it's actually a really well done movie beyond that. Yes, it's campy, yes, it's 80s and silly in a lot of ways, but the overall story and acting and the way it looks in general is actually really well done. I had only heard of this and seen parts of it through the years, but I had never fully sat down and watched this movie from beginning to end. And I was really surprised because I knew that it was campy and I knew of it being that 1980s kind of silliness to it, but it really isn't. It's much more serious and much more devastating when certain characters die, and much more of a passionate, directed project than I ever thought it was. Because if you take away that it looks silly because of it being old and from the 80s, the design of the blood and the creature and all that, if you take that element out of it, that does date it, it's actually a really haunting, horrific story. So it's this really fun combination of the two, because you have that silly, campy goriness of the 80s, but with this really disturbing story that Clive Barker wrote, and everybody involved really giving it their all. So when you take those two things, you're in for a very entertaining watch. This is one that if you've never seen it, or if it's been a while, it is an absolute must. Evil Aliens is a 2005 British slapstick horror comedy. Directed by Jake West, it stars Emily Booth, Jodie Shaw, Jamie Honeyborn, and Christopher Adamson. The story is about an unsuccessful yet opportunistic TV reporter who throws a team together and sets out to investigate a case where a girl claims to have been abducted and impregnated by aliens. But these are not your sweet, everyday little grays.
Abduction is hardly original, is it? I mean, what's your angle on that then?
She's suddenly pregnant.
Who's the father? Please tell me it's E.T.
Man, what an absolutely wild, wild movie this is. This is silly, over the top, campy, gory, just absolutely batshit crazy, but so much fun. At least in my opinion. You have to go into this definitely with a sense of humor, because if you try to take this serious, you're like, this is a slapstick, poorly put together, no budget, blah blah blah. But it's not. This is a really self-aware project. They really knew and achieved what they were trying to with it. Because this isn't a crazy budget movie, but there's definitely enough budget here that they didn't have to go the direction they did. Because some of the effects and things that are done are purposely cheesy, purposely look cheap, but are actually in reality not super cheap and not that easy to pull off. It goes in so many directions because it has this strange tonal shift where at times it'll feel scary and like it's actually intimidating, right? And then it'll go in another direction where it's just absolutely bonkers silliness where you're slipping on bananas kind of shit. But then it'll go back and be this other super body horror bizarreness. Like, it just has so many different shifts in tempo and tone, but it all strangely works together because you can tell that everybody involved were having a great time with it. So if you like over the top, goopy, gory, disturbing, uncomfortable, campy, silly, just everything and in between movies, then definitely by all means check it out. Maniac is a 2012 psychological slasher horror movie, directed by Frank Kaufman and is a remake of the 1980 film of the same name. It stars Elijah Wood and Nora Arnett. The story's about a serial killer who removes his victims' scalps and attaches them to vintage mannequins he restores in his late mother's shop. This is such a twisted, absolutely well done movie, because as much as I find the original to be creepy and disturbing and very, very uncomfortable, this one is too, but yet it feels very different. It's hard to even put a finger on exactly what feels so different about it, but it completely feels like a different movie, even though it's redoing basically the exact same premise and for the most part the same story. For one, Elijah Wood just performs the hell out of this character. He is so strange and awkward and just very uncomfortable, makes your skin crawl, but yet in a strange way you find yourself kind of caring about him on some strange, bizarre level. But it gets absolutely horrific and twisted and just really bizarre throughout. It's a very slick, well-directed movie. The props and overall look and style of it are fantastic as well. It really is a trip to me that you just don't hear more people talk about this movie, because as much as the original is considered a classic, as far as remakes go, this is one of the best I've ever seen, because it's able to capture that same repulsive uncomfortableness, but in a very different, strange way, to where it doesn't just feel like a snapshot. It very much feels like they made it their own. It's a bizarre, uncomfortable watch, but if you're into strange indie horror, then this is one to definitely add to your list.
Don't do this to us.
The number 23 is a 2007 psychological thriller. Directed by Joel Schumacher, it stars Jim Carrey, Virginia Madsen, and Danny Huston. The story's about a man who becomes obsessed with the number 23 once he reads about it in a strange book, and it seemingly mirrors his own life.
Chapter 1. All I could think about was the number. I met you when I was...
23.
And the day we met was?
September 14th.
9/14. 14 plus 9 is?
23.
This is such a misunderstood movie. It's really bizarre to me. Like, its Rotten Tomatoes rating is like a 7 or some really horrible number, and I was just like, what? What are other people watching? I don't get it. I don't understand why this movie is just so hated. I think maybe a big part of it is that people went into this expecting to see Jim Carrey, this different Jim Carrey. And when this was done, it was at a time where he was still seen as this silly Jim Carrey actor, not as this diverse character who can really perform in whatever type of scenario you ask him to. Because other than that, I don't get it. Because this is a really well put together psychological twisted thriller. It goes down this wild rabbit hole that has you guessing throughout, and it's really performed well by all the different characters involved. Danny Huston is fantastic, and he's always great, and so is Virginia Madsen. They just put on these really believable, intense performances. And it's surprising the directions that it goes. It goes harder and more disturbing than I thought it would. But is it a perfect movie? No. It's just a good time. It's one that'll kind of mess with your mind, and I personally have a lot of fun with twisted psychological thrillers that do that. I just think that if you go into it with the right frame of mind, right headspace, not expecting too much of it, and not picking it apart, that you'll really enjoy it. So I think it's a perfect pick for your Saturday night. So do yourself a favor, grab some popcorn and some candy, and enjoy! Alright guys, that's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, click that subscribe button and ding that little bell, because that's the best way to keep track of this channel. Also, I want to give a huge, massive thank you to the Ghost Pirate Army, to you guys over on Patreon, and to the channel members here. You guys mean so much to me. And if you would like to find out how you can become part of the Ghost Pirate Army over on Patreon, there's a link down in the description. Or if you want to become a channel member, there's a little membership button right there. And like always, thank you so much for watching. Please crush that like button. And remember guys, horror can be fun! If you enjoyed this, click right here to see 10 brilliant movies on Netflix, and I'll see you guys next time!